Yes, guys, hello and welcome back to the Spurs-related YouTube channel. I hope everyone's doing very well on this very hot summer's day on a Friday in the UK. And today, as you can see by the title of the video, we are going to be talking about the topic of, do Spurs have a selling problem? Many of you probably have an opinion on this. This really does span up the chain at Tottenham. In terms of the ownership and in terms of the business that Tottenham delves into. And we're going to be breaking down some of the stats, some of the analysis, and some of the departures that have happened in the past few seasons, and maybe comparing it with certain trends and answering the question, really, do Spurs have a selling problem? Today, I'm joined alongside Andre of SpursRelated again, all the way from Canada. Andre, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing well. Very excited to talk about this specific topic, which I personally think is the best thing to talk about right now, just as we're entering the end of the season. Transfer window is only a few weeks away. And, if we're going to have this overhaul, then, if there is a selling problem, we should really address it.
Absolutely. And we've done a bit of research. We've done a bit of stats number crunching in terms of the difference between how our departures worked in 2015 all the way compared to 2022, 2023, and there has been some noticeable trends which we'll pick up on in just a minute. But guys, before I kick things off, if you do like this type of content, if you do like this short form content, 20-minute videos, smash a thumbs up. And also comment below your thoughts on this talking point. The more comments we get, the better. The more we can interact with you guys in the comments and get some of you involved in the talk. So please do get involved. And yeah, it'd be really good to see what you guys are thinking on this. It is an interesting point. I mean, Andre's now on the phone to some of the Tottenham hierarchy about it. They've already got on to us, but starting things off, just a personal opinion of mine, I do think we've got a massive selling problem. And the reason be, we've had so many players just sitting on our books for many years when they should have been moved on. The likes of Davinson Sanchez, who for me came in 2016-17 when we were at Wembley. I remember being very excited of it. Coming from Ajax as a really highly anticipated young centre-back. He didn't hit the ground running, really. He didn't really perform at a higher level than we thought he would. And he's kind of just been stale on the books ever since. And that's just one of many examples. And I think Davinson Sanchez should have been moved on probably 2 to 3 windows ago. And that's probably being nice. There's been many examples of this. For me, Eric Dyer should have been moved on many moons ago. Ben Davies as well. Harry Winks. Ndombele, who have been put out on loans. Lo Celso. Why are we keeping hold of these players? I don't understand the thought process. I don't understand what we think is suddenly going to happen by loaning a player out that's in their mid to late 20s, that's clearly not going to provide any sort of improvement. I mean, Bergwijn, you said it yourself, Andre. How many times did we say this guy isn't going to improve much more? Let's cash him while we can before he becomes an absolute stale asset.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what's been going on. I think we did cash out on Bergwijn, one of the few in most recent seasons, because other than that, every single player we've brought in has been sold for less than what we bought them for. And I really do think it's an issue where the player gets good and we want to keep them. The player gets bad and we want to sell them. It's not always the case, though. We mentioned this in the last episode, that sometimes it's not about whether the player is good or bad. It's about whether he fits the manager's sort of style of play, right? And if he's not going to fit the style of play, then sell him. Don't be afraid to sell. But it looks like we have been. It's biting us right now. We have some numbers here that are very concerning. The fact that it looks to me the minute that we moved in to this new stadium, the numbers have shifted. Before we moved into the stadium, we actually had a pretty good middle ground where we were selling, I believe in the 17-18 window, we had 103 million euros come in or sorry, yeah, come in terms of departures. We had Kyle Walker leave, Bentaleb leave, but we sold them for a good price. And our arrivals was about 121 million euros. So, and we brought in Sanchez, we brought in Aurier, right? We brought in some players who have stuck around all the way until now. Whether that's been for too long, I don't know. However, once you go past that, you're getting something like, I think in the 2021 window, we sold about 13 million euros worth of players, and we spent about 110 million euros. Talk about, you know, not really making a profit off of players who maybe should have gone. And a lot of them went for free as well, when we could have sold them about a season earlier.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Andre, I'm looking at the last kind of window, 2022-23, when you mentioned about Bergwijn going to Ajax, maybe for a decent enough price. You know, we didn't lose money on him. It was a shame it didn't work out, and he's doing okay at Ajax. But 31 million euros was our biggest sale. 7 million euros for Cameron Carter-Vickers to Celtic, who was promised to be a very good player for us and never really got the chance. And then Tanguy and Dembele, we received a small loan fee from Napoli of 500k. And the rest of the departures are either loans, free transfers, or undisclosed fees. Now, 38 million in departures and 177 million in arrivals. Now, I don't want to make this video about the arrivals. That's a separate video, and that's a completely different analysis. But we have to look at those comparisons. 177 million in arrivals and 38 million in departures. Now, that is, like you said about the profits, and you said about the, you know, the different in the balances in the books. That's crazy. Why are we not selling some of these players that have gone out on loan to then invest and redevelop this squad? It's stale. We know it's stale. So why loan these players out just for them to enter the door next year again and enter back into this deadwood team? I just don't understand it. I'm getting frustrated talking about it, Andre. But why on earth do we have Lo Celso coming back in? Why on earth do we have, you know, Lo Celso, Ndombele coming back in? Reguilon. Okay, I'd love Reguilon to work, but we know it didn't really work out for him. I mean, Joe Rodon, I'd like it to work for him, but how many years do you give these players and just not stop and think, actually? And Lo Celso and Ndombele is inexcusable. If these players come back and try and settle back into this team, I'm so done with Tottenham, because we give them time after time after time. They had different managers to work under. I mean, I just do not understand why you would want this player to return from loan and then try and work it out. There's thousands of players you can recruit into a team that are more hungry, more fit, and more ready to play in a new team. I've watched Ndombele warm up at Tottenham before games. The guy isn't even interested in turning up to warm up before a game, let alone play football at a high standard in the best league in the world. I can't keep seeing this. In answer to the question in the video title, we have a huge problem. And I have no idea what this new, oh, we're just going to loan them out and get them back and then maybe try and sell them and then not get a good enough deal, so we'll just loan them for a bit longer. I just don't understand it. What is your thoughts on that?
Well, I think personally, it's the fact that we've waited way too long to sell these players, and now a club doesn't want to spend the money that Levy wants to sell them at, right? They want to get a cut price for them because they've been so bad for several seasons. So, I mean, let's say this. If you were a club, right, and you thinking, oh, Ndombele might fit our system, right? The manager's like, Ndombele's pretty good, let's get him. And Levy's like, well, we spent about, how much did we spend on him when he came in, actually? Do we have the number for that? Ndombele.
Ndombele was 60, 70 million, mate.
Yeah, I think
maybe
62
55,
million.
60.
Yeah, so we spent around 60 million for him. Do you want to spend 60 million on a guy who's been playing bad for about 2 seasons? He's been out with the club. The fans are like just hating on him. And it looks like in terms of his actual discipline and his stamina isn't very high. Are you willing to spend 60 million on this player? No, probably not.
But Andre, take the hit, and this is the problem. Daniel Levy and the ownership do not want to take hits on these assets because they don't want to lose money. This club is a business. This club is all about the profit and loss. And Daniel Levy, amongst others that are involved in the selling process, cannot stand seeing on their books an asset that was worth £62 million now being worth less than 22 of a £40 million hit. They have to take the hit. They have to realize that the recruitment was absolutely shocking at the time under Steve Hitchin and the likes of those absolute morons. And they have to realize that actually they're going to take a massive hit and they have to just eat humble pie and just say, we made a mistake. Now we need to reach back in our pockets and actually recruit properly in this football club rather than let it turn into an absolute dead stalemate where we just have absolute no sort of interest in improving the squad.
Well, I personally, look, I can understand that at the end of the day, everything is a business. It's all about the numbers, right? But you are right. We do need to, unfortunately, Levy just needs to realize that he has dug himself into a hole, right? And at the moment, in order to get out, you're just going to have to take the hit. You're going to have to realize that in Ndombele, we're not going to get the money that we bought him for. Not even close. We'll be lucky if we get half, right? Lo Celso, same thing. Winks, well, luckily he's a homegrown, so maybe we'll get something out of it. But look at Sissoko. How much money did we spend on him? And then we got, I believe it was like 4 million for him. Personally, I think the minute that Pochettino left, we should have sold Sissoko when he was still in
30 million. That was a panic buy. We stole him from Everton last minute, and I remember thinking, what on earth are we doing? It was a January late. We panicked and we bought Sissoko, didn't we? It was for 35 million euros from Newcastle. Newcastle not only pull our trousers down and smash us 6-1 every time, but they somehow got 35 million euros for Sissoko, which is up there with, for me, one of the worst signings in Tottenham's recent history. I'm selling him to Watford for £3 million just 3 seasons later is absolutely diabolical. And like you said, if we did it earlier, we'd have got more money. You look at Dele Alli. That is, for me, one of the most heartbreaking ones ever. This guy came into Tottenham, rose to the very top, bang, like Mourinho does in the documentary, bang Tottenham, bang national team, bang, player of the year, young player of the year, people saying he can win Ballon d'Ors and whatever else. Maybe you weren't quite on that hype, but, no one can argue that he just went to the very top. And to suddenly downhill, curveball, there was all sorts of reasons for that. But a player that was worth, in the region of £80 million, £100 million, people were talking about at one point, to leave on a free says a whole lot about our recruitment and about our departure kind of dealings. Because even if he was on a decline, which he was, surely, someone sees the light and potential in him to pay a decent amount of money and not just let his contract expire and let him go on a free to Everton. But surely you try and cash in if you know he's not going to be part of the squad and under the team, under that manager at the time. I mean, that is, for me, the pinnacle of the problems at Spurs with departures. I don't know if you agree, but I just do not understand that.
Well, see, you say that someone saw potential in him and someone did, but we didn't cash in on it when it was the right time. And that was Pochettino. When he was at PSG, he wanted Dele Alli, whether it was on loan or loan to buy or just straight up buying him. And Levy said no.
But this is also to do with a bigger problem, which is letting contracts expire, not either renewing or cashing in when we can. I mean, we're going to have the whole discussion about Harry Kane. Is he going to stay? Are they going to let his contract expire? And is he going to end up going on a free? And Andre, I know you prepared a little bit of research in terms of whose contract's expiring next season and the season after. And we're going to be talking about the same sort of thing. These players potentially leaving on a free because we haven't cashed in early enough on the dead wood that we know isn't working at Tottenham. So move them on and get new players in. But we don't recruit properly. We don't have the system where we're researching. Look at Brighton, look at Brentford. They get these players in, they're young, no one's really heard of them, and then they smash it. Mitoma, Estupuna, and in Cucurella when they brought him in. These players weren't heard about, but suddenly become 40, 50, 60 million pound players because they've got the technology and the recruitment system and team to find these gems that aren't going to be too expensive, but are going to work very well.
Well, and you know what? The thing is, it's not always just Deadwood. I'm sure all you guys remember that Eriksson, he was a legend of this club. He gave everything for this club, and he always came out and performed, and he was always one of the best. But then, after the final, he was like, I've had enough. I'd like to go. And Levy said no. That is the equivalent of being in a relationship. One person wants to leave, and you won't let them. They're not in it anymore. That's just what it was. Eriksson didn't want to be here anymore. Imagine you being his teammate, seeing that the higher-ups, your friend, your colleague, wants to go, and they're not letting him go. That's going to put a damper on the entire squad, the entire morale of the squad. You know, the higher-ups won't let you go. They're keeping you hostage. And there were some good clubs out there that were willing to take him. But we didn't do that. Instead, what we did is we hardballed Inter at the last second when we had 6 months left on his contract, when they wanted about, I think, 3 million less for him. And he was like, no, we're putting him at this much. This is how much you need to pay him if you want him now. And we did. And then later it came to bite us because in the following window, we wanted Skriniar, and Inter did the same thing to us. So we never got Skriniar.
Yep.
So, you know, I think that we just need to really look at the idea that you need to trust the people you employ. If you bring in a manager and he says to you, this player isn't going to fit my system, then after some discussions, you just need to sell him, have a decent conversation with the player and find a new place for him that will work. Because at the end of the day, we need to look at these players beyond their price, right? They are human beings. They're people with lives. And just as they're people, we get along with certain people. We don't get along with everyone. I've brought this up in the previous episode. Dyer, while maybe not the best defender by a long shot, he was pretty good with Mourinho, right? When Mourinho left, that should have been your thing. Okay, I think Dyer needs to go in this window because he was the only one who brought something out of him. Pochettino, whatever, he was always on the bench. When Mourinho came in, he was like the guy in the defense. He was the main defender in there alongside other defenders that we started upgrading. Right. I believe there was one season where he was injured for a bit and fans were rejoicing that Dyer was back in the lineup. Now, whether that's to the idea of that our defense in general wasn't that good, but Mourinho brought him to an equality where we wanted him on the lineup. So things to think about. You know, in the upcoming window, let's move on to the players who are expiring within the next season, right? You've got Sanchez, you've got Dyer, Lloris, Kane, Perisic, Forster, Austin. A couple of players we won't talk about, but let's talk about Dyer for a second. There is a team right now that actually could work for him. Roma, with Mourinho. Why not? If they can make Chris Smalling be a good defender again, I think Mourinho would want Dyer on his team.
Please take him, Mourinho. I love Mourinho. I love Jose Mourinho. And if he takes Eric Dyer, I love him even more because, I mean, I don't think Eric Dyer works at many clubs. I mean, I think the guy is very, very bad at football. I think he has he has a mistake in him every 1 in 2 games. I've said it for the last 2 years on this podcast. If Mourinho can turn him into what he's done with Chris Smalling, then fair play. And please do take him. The other one I'd mention, I think it needs a whole nother video, is Harry Kane. He's either going to leave on a free next year. I can't see him signing a contract, or he's going to be bought for like 80 million to 100 million pounds this summer. Do Man United come in for him? It's a whole nother question. It's a whole nother video, I think, Andre. But there's also some considerable contracts expiring in 2025, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, Heung-min Son, Højbjerg, Sessegnon, Davies. You got all these players who they're, now whether or not they actually have contract extensions in their clauses is another story. But the fact that we're getting close to Heung-min Son also being at the end of his contract is quite concerning. What do you do with a guy who has now gone over, he's past year 30, right? And he's got a contract expiring, a season where he hasn't played very well. What do we do with that? Do we keep him for another season and see what happens? Obviously, he's done a lot for this club. I think he deserves more than just one bad season and we let him go. But it's not about that. It's about what does this club need, right? Heung-min Son is right on the verge there where, if we sell him now, maybe we'll make a good profit. If we don't sell him, we could risk possibly not making anything for him, because especially when a player at least reaches their last year of their contract, clubs know that they can lowball us, because it's either they sign a contract or they like what they see and they'll wait a season until they're free.
Pre-contracts. Yeah, exactly. So I just don't, for me with Son, I just don't think that contract's going to be renewed. I very much doubt it. I think they'll give him another season. They'll see how he does this season. And then I think he would potentially move on, whether that's another Premier League club or a team abroad. I'm not too sure. But I think we're going to be in a similar situation with Kane, although Son is arguably in decline and Kane is at his peak, and every club in the world would love Harry Kane, I think.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think there's reports that Erik ten Hag and Manchester United, they have made this decision that they're going to make this quick, right? They don't want to do the Levy process where they spend all summer negotiating. They're just going to come in, they're going to bid once, they're going to see what Levy responds with, they'll bid again, and then that's it. So either we sell him now or we don't. And then he leaves on a free, because I don't see Harry Kane signing a new contract, because we've given him, Levy's given him like 5 projects to be excited about. And every single one, they've all been screwed over. So
ironically, every single project that Harry Kane's been involved in, he's been in the same squad, even though it's a brand new project, because he still had Eric Dyer, he still had Davinson Sanchez, he still had Japhet Tanganga, he still had Harry Winks. You get my point. He still had the same players, other than 1 or 2 that have come in that then get loaned out anyway. So it's not really a new project, because it's either a new manager, but it's the same absolute garbage. And it's the same furniture. It's the same. It's just every single season we get promised this new project where we're going to get a war chest, so we're going to invest, and then we don't invest properly. And then if we do put some money in, like Richarlison, it's not well thought out. £60 million wasted on a player that gets more yellow cards than goals. I mean, I could go on, but the point is the recruitment's awful and the departure business is awful. I want to do a video on the potential incomings this season, but obviously we know our pulling power is not going to be what it was. No European football, or certainly no Europa League and Champions League. There's all sorts of different problems. I mean, we had Slot today. Our last video was about Arne Slot. He's now signed a new deal at Feyenoord. This club does not have the pulling power it once did. It has the pulling power to pull in F1 and Beyonce, brilliant, but it doesn't have the pulling power to bring in a centre-back that's competent enough to defend against Premier League football teams. And this is a big, big, big problem for Tottenham. We should have got centre-back many, many years ago, and we just didn't. And now we're in a situation where we're going to struggle to attract actual good players. And the likes of Brighton are in the lead compared to us. How tragic is that? It upsets me that players would rather go and play for Brighton than Tottenham. And if you think, whoever's watching thinks that is absolute rubbish, take a look, because I would rather go and play for a Europa League team with an amazing backroom staff and manager where there is a genuine project, rather than Tottenham, who is just curveballed all the way down to the kind of football club I used to watch growing up in sort of the noughties, where we were absolute pony, Andre.
Yeah, well, I haven't been a Tottenham fan for that long, but I've heard the stories. Right now, we're in a position that we're going to finish. We could finish in 9th if Brentford wins and we lose this coming weekend.
It doesn't bear thinking about. And to be honest, I don't want Europa Conference League, but we will see what happens on Sunday against Leeds. Guys, we normally do a preview for a game, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm not that interested. I'll be honest. I'm a massive Tottenham fan. I love Tottenham. I do a podcast. I live and breathe it. I talk about it every day. But I hope genuinely, and I don't know if anyone agrees, I don't want Europa Conference League. So in that case, I'm not too interested in the Leeds game. I would actually rather we lost so we don't get Europa Conference League. I know that's awful to say, but I'm just being honest with you on this podcast. I always will be. I do not want Europa Conference League. I do not want 7th place. I would rather finish 8th or 9th. And that is how bad this has got this year. But that is probably another video. Guys, I hope you have enjoyed this video idea and smash a thumbs up if you did enjoy. Andre, thanks for all the research and the great facts, mate, as always. Always an absolute pleasure. Subscribe if you're new, guys. We're really trying to branch out and do all sorts of video ideas. So give us some video ideas in the comments as well. Smash the thumbs up, like I said, all that good stuff. Go and follow us on Instagram, Twitter. We're posting all the time, all the transfer news, all the quotes, all the good stuff. And guys, as remember, I messed up at the end. But remember, as always, guys, come on, you Spurs.